Alright, so I want to start this video slightly differently because if you've been watching the market over the last few weeks, it probably feels a bit strange right now. Not just because prices have been choppy, but because something about the way things are moving doesn't quite feel the same as it did before. Bitcoin has just come through one of its weakest stretches in years. Headlines are calling it the worst 6-month period since 2018. We've got macro uncertainty everywhere, geopolitical tension building, oil moving aggressively, regulation still unclear. And yet, at the same time, parts of the crypto market are still quietly holding up. And that's the part that people aren't really talking about. Because normally, when things get uncertain like this, everything just moves together. The whole market gets dragged in one direction. Good projects, weak projects, real utility, pure hype. It all gets treated exactly the same. It becomes emotional, reactive, and honestly, a bit chaotic. But this time, it doesn't feel like that. This feels different. Instead of everything moving as one big wave, we're starting to see separation. Not just in price, but in purpose. Some projects are holding their ground better than others. Some are attracting attention without making noise. And some are slowly fading into the background. And that's usually a very important signal. Because when a market starts behaving like that, it means that something underneath is changing. Money stops chasing everything and starts choosing. Attention stops being scattered and starts becoming more focused. And instead of people asking, what's pumping next, the market starts asking much better questions. What is this actually used for? Who is building it? Who genuinely needs it? And more importantly, where does this asset fit if crypto stops being this wild speculative playground and starts becoming part of the actual financial system? Because that's the shift we're slowly moving into. And once you see that, you realise this isn't just a dip. This is the early stage of the market deciding what actually matters. So in this video, I want to break this down properly. We're going to look at what's happening with Bitcoin right now because yes, the weakness matters and yes, the macro environment is playing a huge role. But more importantly, we're going to zoom out and look at the top altcoins, Ethereum, BNB, XRP, Solana and TRON, and understand why they are no longer all moving as one. Because each of them is starting to represent something very different. Different use cases, different narratives, different positions in what could become the next version of the financial system. And if you can understand how those pieces connect, you're not just reacting to the market anymore. You're starting to actually read it. And that is where the real edge comes from. Now, before we get into this, if you're new here, welcome, I'm Paula. On this channel, I break down crypto, macro, geopolitics, and the deeper stories driving this market so that you're not just following noise, you're actually understanding what's going on underneath it. And if that's the kind of content you're into, make sure you hit subscribe. Right, let's start with Bitcoin because whether people like it or not, Bitcoin still sets the tone for everything else. So here's the situation with Bitcoin right now. We're heading into the monthly close and Bitcoin is on the edge of something that sounds quite dramatic. Potentially its worst 6-month stretch since 2018. Price recently dropped down towards $65,000 before bouncing slightly. But the bigger issue isn't just the level itself, it's the environment around it. Because Bitcoin isn't moving in isolation right now. It's being pulled around by much bigger forces. You've got rising geopolitical tension, particularly around Iran and the Middle East. You've got oil prices pushing higher. You've got growing conversations around stagflation. And you've got uncertainty around regulation in the US still hanging over the market. So when people look at Bitcoin and say this looks weak, they're not wrong. But they might be missing why it looks weak. Because this isn't just a crypto problem. This is a macro problem. And in environments like this, capital doesn't disappear. It becomes cautious, it moves slower, it concentrates. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Bitcoin dominance is still strong, which tells you something very important. Even when the market is under pressure, money is still clustering around what it sees as the safest asset in crypto. So Bitcoin isn't collapsing in isolation. It's acting like a center of gravity in a very unstable environment. And that's a completely different way to look at it. Now, when we move away from Bitcoin, this is where things start to get really interesting. The altcoin market isn't behaving as one single group anymore. Let's start with Ethereum. Ethereum is still the backbone of a huge part of crypto. Stablecoins, DeFi, tokenization, a lot of real activity still runs through Ethereum. But here's the shift. Ethereum is no longer being judged on just hype or narrative. It's being judged on usage, on actual activity, on whether people are building, transacting, and settling value on chain. And that puts Ethereum in a very different position. Because if the future of crypto really is about tokenized assets, digital finance, and on chain settlement, Ethereum should benefit massively. But if that adoption slows, Ethereum feels it more than most. So ETH right now isn't just another altcoin. It's almost like a test of whether real usage is actually growing. Now compare that to BNB. BNB is tied directly to Binance, which is one of the most powerful companies in crypto. And that makes it very unique, because BNB isn't just a token. It's connected to an entire ecosystem that generates real revenue, real volume, and real activity. But that also comes with pressure, regulation, legal scrutiny, constant oversight. So BNB becomes something very specific. It becomes a bet, not just on crypto growing, but on large crypto businesses surviving and adapting under regulation. And that's a completely different type of investment thesis. Now, XRP. XRP is one of the most interesting shifts in the entire market right now, because for years the story was simple. It was all about the lawsuit. Would Ripple win? Would XRP survive? But now that uncertainty is clearing, the story has changed. Now the question is, what does XRP actually become? XRP has always positioned itself as the bridge between crypto and the financial system. And if regulation becomes clearer, if institutions become more involved, if global finance starts integrating digital assets, then XRP's role suddenly becomes much more relevant. So XRP is no longer just a legal story, it's a positioning story. Does it become part of the infrastructure or not? Now, Solana. Solana feels very different again, because Solana isn't trying to be the legacy system. It's positioning itself as a high-speed alternative. And what's really interesting is that institutions are starting to pay attention. We're seeing ETF discussions. We're seeing big players explore exposure. And that tells you that Solana has crossed a line. It's no longer just a retail favourite. It's being looked at as a serious asset. So Solana becomes a bet on growth, on speed, on attracting the next wave of capital. And then TRON. This is one a lot of people overlook, but TRON plays a very specific role in the market. It handles huge amounts of stablecoin volume, real transaction flow, real usage. And recently we've seen something interesting. Legal pressure easing slightly, and at the same time, more institutional access opening up. That combination matters, because it suggests TRON isn't being pushed out of the system, it's being pulled closer into it. So when you step back and look at all of this together, you start to see the bigger picture. This market isn't just moving up and down anymore, it's organising itself. Bitcoin as the core, Ethereum as the infrastructure layer, BNB as the exchange ecosystem, XRP as the financial bridge, Solana as the growth play, TRON as the transaction layer. And once you see that, you realise something important. This isn't just a dip. This is the market deciding what each asset actually is. And this is where I think a lot of people are getting it wrong right now. They're still waiting for everything to move together, waiting for that classic alt season. But the market might not work like that anymore, because as crypto matures, it becomes more selective, more structured, more connected to real-world systems. And that means not everything wins at the same time. Some assets will lead, some will lag, and some will slowly disappear. So maybe the better question right now isn't when does everything go up again? Maybe it's which of these actually matters in the system that's being built? That's the real game right now. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, which of these do you think actually wins long term? Ethereum, BNB, XRP, Solana, or TRON? And as always, if you want to know the exact strategies we use in the Crypto Wolf Pack to make money in both the bull market and the bear market, we've made a completely free course for you. It's called the Crypto Liftoff course, and the link is in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.